Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the QT2 podcast series, My Life as a Pro. My name is Reem Jishi, and I'm the content director for QT2. And our featured guest today is Tim Snow. Welcome, Tim.
How you doing? How's it going?
Good. So today I want to talk to you about both your experience as a pro and also your experience coaching pros. So we're going to start with you, though, and I just want you to give me a quick summary of when and how you entered into the sport of triathlon.
I entered into the sport of triathlon in 1998, just out of college. Uh, I I was a runner in college, and I had experienced some running injuries, IT band syndrome, uh, during college, which ended up kind of pushing me towards doing some swimming, not well, and some riding of a bike. I wouldn't even call it cycling. And then which and that kind of coincided with a time in my life where the one of the coaches at my college was friends with Karen Smyers, who had won Kona in 1995, so 3 years prior to my first triathlon. And that coach had Karen come speak to us as a team. And Karen had made a comment when she was speaking to us about triathlon, and said how, if you can swim and you can run, anyone can learn how to ride a bike, and you can do triathlon. And I could run, I couldn't really swim, but I thought maybe I could. And so that kind of lit a little fire into me. I also knew of triathlon in the world, and so I ended up doing my first sprint triathlon in 1998, and I fell in love with it. I I got out of the water. I couldn't believe that I had to do anything after swim. I started riding. I was on a mountain bike, so if I was really killing myself down the road, everyone was blowing by me. And then I got onto the run, and I was a good runner, but I was also so far back from the swim and the bike that I just passed people, and I passed people really quickly. And I think that I felt like a world class athlete all of a sudden. And I think that that kind of became a little bit addicting. And I fell in love with that feeling. And here we are, 26 years later. So I'm still doing it
Still
in some
doing it.
ways. Yeah.
So how did you go then from that, that first race is coming out of the water behind people, being on a mountain bike, having a good run, but did you get a bike?
Yeah, I got a bike. I bought a bike. I didn't buy the right bike. I didn't buy a good bike. I just bought a bike. But it started to become the kind of thing that I did. So, the rest of 1998, I did some dabbling, and then over the winter and into 1999, I really fell in love with it, and I just went all in. I raced here in New England during the summer. We have great local events, and during a certain during those years, you could race every single weekend and sometimes twice. And if you could, I did. And so I spent 99 and 2000 pretty much doing that. I raced every single weekend and sometimes twice during the summer months.
Mhm.
And over time, I got a little bit better and better and better. It didn't happen overnight, that's for sure. But I kept it just like I said, it became the thing that I did. I woke up, I trained, I went to work, I came home from work, I trained, and while I was at work, I was thinking about when I was going to be training, and it just became probably an obsession, I would say. And I think I had some some growth with that, so.
So at
And
that
that,
time,
yeah.
over those couple of years where you were racing every weekend, sometimes twice, what distances were you doing?
Oh, sprints, Olympics, whatever the local race directors were offering, I would do. And I did like one of the early, I don't know if it was the first, but one of the early Timbermans,
Mhm.
um, who uh, who at a time when Pete Jacobs, who would go on to win Kona years later, also did the race. I just remember that I think he won Timberman at that year, but years later he would win Kona. I would dabble in the 70.3. It was called half Ironman back then.
Mhm.
And in 2000, I had some friends who had been doing Ironman for a couple of years, and I just said, "Oh yeah, I'll do that too." Right. And
Okay.
I had every inclination that I should be able to get to Kona, despite never having ridden my bike more than 40 miles or anything like that. And I went and I did Lake Placid in 2000, and I did not get to Kona. I didn't, not even close. Um, but I had fun. I had a great time, and uh, and that kind of touched off uh, a little bit of an Ironman addiction, I would say, of 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 enjoying doing that.
Okay. So, oh, so you raced Lake Placid in 2000. So second year of Placid, was that?
I think it was the third year. I think it was. I think '98 was the first year, but I don't know. It
Yeah,
was a long
early.
time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was early. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I
Okay.
raced in a speedo and yeah. That's a whole different podcast.
Oh yeah, no, when I first started tries, it was 2000 and my first race was in a speedo. And I was like, after that race, which was Olympic distance, I was like, there has to be another option. I don't want to race in this. This is
Yeah.
ridiculous. I found something else. So, so how did you go then from racing the local sprints and Olympic and dabbling in the half Ironmans and deciding to do an Ironman to then becoming a pro?
Yeah. So I was having this kind of so in that 99 2000 time, I was racing a lot. When I say a lot, I mean a lot. Um and with that, I was beginning to have some success, but like local success, right?
Mhm.
Now I didn't recognize probably that local success didn't necessarily translate over into regional and national and world success. My world was in New England, and I was pretty good in New England, and um, so I had I had met the qualification standards to go pro laid out by USA Triathlon, and I I had done. I'm not saying that this was like the most well thought out plan, but it did kind of alter the trajectory of my triathlon experience. So I had met the qualification standards, and I had done Ironman Lake Placid in July of 2000, and I didn't have the race that I wanted to have, and I really wanted to do another Ironman, and the only Ironman available at that time was Ironman Florida, which
Mhm.
was sold out, and so, but you could get in as a pro. And so I had the qualification standards and the, you know, and the want to do Ironman. So I said, well, I'm in my head, I'm racing these guys anyway. Like I'm always going to compare myself wherever I fall. I'm going
Mhm.
to compare myself to that. I might as well just race them, and then I can get into this event. It was a bit short sighted, but it's what I did. So I went pro, and it was really like there was what I could do and probably what I should do, and this was like what I could do, and so I did it. Should I have? Eh, probably not. Am I glad I did? Yes, I'm glad I did, but I probably wouldn't advise my younger self to do that again. Uh,
Okay. So tell me then, so you show up. By this point, are you a little more comfortable with your swimming ability? Having raced?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So I
So,
was a high school teacher, and I was working at a school that had a swim team, and the head coach of the swim team had been the head coach for like 30 years. And I went to him one day at the school, and I said, "Hey, I'm trying to become a better swimmer. I'm this triathlete, blah blah blah. Could I swim with the team?" And he said to me, "You want to coach?" And I said, oh, I don't really know anything about swimming. He said, that doesn't matter. And so I said, all right. So I became the assistant coach, and later the head coach when he retired. He just passed actually. And so I was coaching these kids to swim, which I was learning as I went. And then in the like latter part of practice, I'd be able to get in and swim with them. So we had this kind of deal. And so from that, I just kind of improved.
Okay.
I mean, did I become Mark Spitz overnight? No, I did not. But it definitely got better. It went from side stroke. I could side stroke a mile in 30 minutes to I could swim. You know, I was getting pretty okay.
Okay.
Swimming in the realm of things, swimming came relatively easy to me.
Okay. So here you are now, though. You show up to Ironman Florida. You're in the
Yeah,
pro field. What
yeah.
was what was that like? Did you walk in? You're like, oh my God.
Oh,
Or,
I got the shit. Well, so it's interesting because I ended up doing a race. My first pro race was not Ironman Florida. It was in September, third week in September. So, you know, I basically did Lake Placid, immediately wanted to do another Ironman. So immediately went pro. And so I could sign up for Florida in November. And then there was a race in oh boy, Rye, New York, at Playland Park, and it was a pro race. And this is it's kind of funny to think about because I this was my very first pro race, and so I have this pro card, and I remember the irrationality of thought that had to go through my brain that because I had this pro card, it must mean I will therefore at least beat all the age groupers, right?
Mhm.
Which is not the case. It's not the way it works.
Yeah.
So I had gone to that race and I got I got manhandled. And so that was a little eye opening. So I was a little aware of like, okay, you better. I am in Florida. Like you did that thing, and I am in Florida is here. Like it's gonna be what it's gonna be, and it was. Like it was everything that it was gonna be. I got in black. I got the shit kicked out of me. But it's okay.
But you came back to do it again.
Yeah, I know. And funny enough, as a pro, um, I kind of spent the next that was 2000. Like probably I didn't really have a race. My results all over the map, and the good ones were pretty good. The bad ones were really bad. So my ceiling was rather low.
Mhm.
Um, the It wasn't until about 2007 that I had a breakthrough race. Much of it had to do with just completely haphazard fueling
Okay.
at the Ironman distances. I was training a lot. I was training hard. I was tremendously durable, but I could not access that fitness or speed because I was completely underfueled. I would walk around a Publix in Florida the night before a race trying to, maybe I'll try Fig Newtons tomorrow, you know, the day. And it wasn't until 2007 when Jesse and I really talked about fueling that light went on, to be honest with you. I
Okay.
was able to access everything I had done.
So when you started it before, like when you were, I mean, you entered as a pro, were you working with a coach at all at that time or just
No,
figuring
I thought
stuff out?
I could do it myself.
Okay.
I and I was my father. I remember he I met with somebody who did a bike fit for me. I was in my early 20s, and my father was with me, and the guy offered to give me some coaching. I didn't know anything about cycling. I could ride a bike, right, but I didn't know anything about cycling. And the guy offered to give me some coaching, and my father said, "You should do that. I'll pay for it." I said, "Nope, I got this. I got it all figured out." Way off the mark.
Yeah. So were you doing like your research on it and figuring things out, or you were just doing?
I mean, research, sure. We did. It was research was different back then than it is
Yeah,
now, right?
right.
And so, like, research consisted of like a triathlon book that Scott Tinley wrote, right? It
Yeah.
wasn't, you couldn't go to the library and look up Britannica.
Yeah.
And we didn't have necessarily the online web-based resources that we have now. So I really relied heavily on actually, now that you do jog a good memory, I probably still have the book, the Scott Tinley triathlon book, and he had laid out training weeks and sample volumes of professional athletes, and I just went with that, right? And it was, the volumes were insane to try and do, but I was a guy in his 20s. What else did I have to do? When I wasn't working, so that's what I did, and I became tremendously durable.
That volume was probably helpful
Yeah,
as you went
but
on.
it's funny you say that, because was I doing the research? Yeah, I think I was. I think that I had a little bit of there was a certain level of ignorance that I had going on, was that I thought I could figure it out, but at the same time, I didn't know what it was that I needed to figure out. And so I was running around blind a lot. I really didn't know what I didn't know,
Yeah.
at all. I knew nothing about. I didn't know that there were cycling shorts. Right. I just used to wear boxer shorts and Umbros, and it wasn't until, this wasn't all the way until 2007, obviously, but this is like in the 2000 2001 time frame. I knew nothing about cycling shorts. I had a tough ass, right? But I don't anymore. But, and so, like, I didn't even know that kind of stuff,
Okay.
right? Um, yeah.
Yeah. All right. And the nutrition piece, do
Uh,
you learn from like, okay, I had a bad race and this is what I ate, so maybe I should do something different the
oh yeah,
next
yeah, yeah, yeah.
time? Or,
But
yeah.
the learning curve was like really shallow, like
Okay.
really, really shallow. I made every mistake under the sun, and like we could have fun just going through that. But it was always a work in progress, always. Um, and now knowing what, now we argue about like a product that has this much maltodextrin relative to salt versus fructose. Like we are having granular arguments now. Back then, I was like playing with Ensure, right? And I don't, the stuff I tried was absolutely ridiculous. Looking back, they were valiant efforts. They were more calorie based than they were carbohydrate based. It was like, how can I get calories in my body? And so you would just try things that would turn out to be ridiculous. Um,
Yeah, I
but
mean, back then though, there were definitely, there was the original Power Bar.
yep, oh yeah,
There really weren't that many choices in the 2000
which
era.
kind of should have made it easy, right?
Well, if you like Power Bars, you know?
Like they had a gel, right? It
Yeah,
was like toothpaste, but it existed.
yeah.
And so like it should have just been as simple as eat this one option that you have and you'll be fine, right? But I was seemed to be going to everything other than that,
Mhm.
right? Um and I think that's the first time I ever had a power gel. I was running the Boston Marathon. I was at like mile 16 and they passed it out and I took it and I was like, oh, this is pretty decent. I should look into this. What is this thing? Um, yeah, but before that, it was really, really haphazard.
Yeah. All right. So you said, your breakthrough race was in 2007 after you had been working with Jesse now a little bit, or having conversations with Jesse about nutrition. So how did that come to be that you and Jesse met each other and started interacting and stuff?
We were on the same triathlon team, and we were both doing Lake Placid in 2006, and he, myself, and our friend Brian had a three-way bet on who would win Lake Placid between the three of us, and Brian had gone out on a training ride with Jesse, and kind of let me. I was the experienced one of the group. Brian was a good triathlete too, but he wasn't an Ironman type guy, but he was doing it. But I would consider myself to have been the favorite in that three-way bet. And Brian said, "You better keep an eye on Jesse. He's getting in good shape." So I said, "Well, okay, keep your friends close and your enemies closer." So I scheduled a ride with him. We went out for a ride, and we just talked about triathlon stuff. And he was somebody who was I raced with a lot, but I didn't really know that well. And I was always faster than him, and I also was armed with a tremendous ego, such that if I was faster than you, there's no way you knew more than I did, right? And which would prove to be tremendously incorrect. And he was talking about things nutrition wise, and I was like, I should probably pay attention to what he's saying. And I began to, and we started to train more and more and more together. And I started to recognize him as somebody who had done his homework. And I would say, on the local scene, again, he and I raced together on the local scene. On the local scene, I was significantly faster than he was, but purely based on talent, not like the cognitive thought, like the putting thought into it, right? I could throw my fitness and talent against the wall and beat his fitness and talent, but as an Ironman, where there was going to have to be more thinking involved, he was going to get me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what
I
kinds
won
of
the bet though.
What's that?
I won the bet.
You won the bet.
Barely.
Okay. Did you listen?
Barely.
Did you listen to his recommendations? You won the bet because you feel
No, I
or
didn't.
no?
I didn't. But so I didn't listen to his recommendations to win the bet. But it led to me listening to his recommendations because there was cash on the line, and because I won the bet, he owed me like $400. And he and his wife Chrissy had just bought a house, and I didn't want the $400. So I said, "Hey, you keep telling me about these race fueling plans. Why don't you give me one of those?" And so he gave me one of those. He's like, "Absolutely," which now I understand. Yeah, that was a no-brainer. He gave me one of those, and that is something that I started to practice. And in the very next race that I did, it clicked.
Okay.
Yeah.
So over the time, what was the length of your pro career? 2002, when did you stop racing as a pro?
I would say like 2000 to 2000, like 11-ish. And then I took like a little hiatus. I got burnt out, and then I came back for another year and a half in like 2013, which was more of like a farewell tour. Is really how I would consider it to be. I did a lot of racing as a pro, like a lot of racing, and I got burnt out in the like 11, 12 time frame. And then I got a little bit of fire back in 13, but I knew that, well, I remember being out on a 70.3 course. I don't remember where I was. But I remember thinking to myself, these guys have gotten fast, and I'm not going to be able to hang anymore. Because I did have some decent results from 2007 to 2011, 12. And in that 13-ish time frame, a 12-ish time frame, I said, these guys have gotten fast. And I should, and I was also not making the sacrifices that would need to be made to say, I think, consider yourself a pro, right? Like there's that word pro is a pretty loaded word. What does it mean, right? Like it's I had met the standards to be a pro, but was I living the life? And for a while, yes, I absolutely was. Like I would do the things that I believed were necessary to be the best athlete that I could be. And to me, that was pretty pro, right? But then that started to wane. And so while I still maybe had the standards, I didn't have the commitment to make those intentional choices to be the best athlete. And so and that's kind of when I said, nah, you should probably, it's probably the end of the road.
Okay.
So,
So over that time, was Ironman your distance, your specialty distance?
yeah, Ironman, I dabbled in ITU,
Okay.
which did not go well. I played with it, but I mean, I just wasn't even close to a good enough swimmer. The 70.3 was a decent distance for me, but I wasn't quick enough. Um, but it was long enough for me, but I wasn't. It was still a little too quick. Ironman was a durability based event, and that's kind of where I was. I was good at that. That's where I was the strongest because I was a pretty decent runner on the Ironman scene. I was a good runner on the 70.3 scene, but I was quite strong in a marathon off the bike. And so I think in part, because I had a very high level of durability, and so there wasn't a lot of fade in my run, and so I got a lot of that made up for a lot of sins, or would catch up to a lot of people, I guess. Like I would never like my race strategy when I was racing well was to get off the bike in like 13th to 15th place and then run to somewhere 5th to 9th, right? And that's just repeat, repeat, repeat. Um, because the run was a strength of mine.
So over those years, is there a race that like sticks out at you as like, yeah, that was it. That was my best race. That was, when
Hmm.
you come back to.
Ah, no, not really. Honestly, I kind of don't think about it. Uh, I, I, most days I forget that I raced, at a pro, at the pro level. Um, they were all kind of fun, right? I remember having a great time or a great race at Ironman Coeur d'Alene in some year. I think it was maybe 2011. I think I came in fifth or sixth. I'm not sure. But what I remember most was just finishing so strong on the run. And it had like this long Main Street finish. And I, I, I picked off a guy or two in the final, say 200 yards of the race. I just remember that was fun. They're kind of vague, honestly. Well, yeah, a lot of the memories are kind of vague.
So did you make it to Kona?
Yep, I raced. I raced Kona twice as a pro. We had different It was different back then. Um, we didn't. They weren't. It wasn't a point series. It was very similar to the roll down effect amongst the age groupers. I raced twice as a pro and once as an age grouper. I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So in 2014, when you officially retired as a pro, then you keep on racing?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So I kind of said, all right, this 2013, I'm gonna do, and I said I want to have t-shirts made because I'm gonna have this farewell time. I'm gonna go do all the races that I always wanted to do that I can get into because I'm a pro. Because this isn't gonna last very long. And so I wasn't like intentionally retiring from being a pro. I just said this is probably the end of the line, right? I'll hold on to the card as long as you'll let me keep it. Um, because there were some benefits that went with it in terms of like I could sign up for a race, at the last minute. Um, but I lost my qualification standard, and I actually ran into him in Placid this year. In 2013, I did Ironman Lake Placid. At the last minute, I kind of jumped into the race because I think Benny was doing it, Doug was doing it, Kerbo was doing it, so I'll do it with you guys. And I did the race, and I missed requalifying to be a pro in 2014-15 by 17 seconds, right? And because I wouldn't say because, but that was the first race in probably 15 years or 13 years where I tied my shoes in transition. Because I said, I'm out of here anyway. I'm just going to tie my shoes. I'm not going to use elastic laces. So I tied, and Andy Potts won the race, and he beat me by enough that the 17 seconds difference was like, and so I saw him in Lake Placid this year, and I told him the story. It was funny. Oh, so you
I
asked me if
guess
I
if it
raced. So,
comes down, I guess if it comes down to 17 seconds, then
yeah.
they feel like, okay.
So I in 2014 to 13, I just said, okay, I let the license go, but I continued to race. I did an Ironman. I did Ironman France in 2014. I'm pretty sure I did some Ironman races in the next. I think I did Texas in 15. I think I did Kona in 15. And yeah, and then I did not do Ironman for a couple of years, and I did Ironman for another couple of years, and like in my 40s. I think the last Ironman I did was in 2021, but I still do local races. I love to do local races. Absolutely love them. And I'll jump in a 70.3 every now and again. I find the distance to be a little more reasonable for I don't when I trained so much for Ironman. I've done a lot of Ironman. I've done somewhere between 45 and 50 Ironman. I'm not really sure, but which is fine. But the training that goes along with it is if I walk up and down the stairs, like I look like a retired NFL running back sometimes, and like it took a pretty heavy toll, and so I just have no real desire to continue that training. Because I don't feel like I can race the distance anymore. Like I could probably do the distance, but I don't feel like I could race it anymore. And if I'm gonna race, I want to race. And so I feel like I can race up to a 70.3. And so I'm happy to jump in a triathlon just about any time once I'm in shape. If I feel like I can race it.
Yeah. So, I mean, but that you've also done gravel racing, mountain biking,
Yep.
and running events. And I mean, so you're still out there having fun with the sport.
Oh
And
yeah, absolutely.
yeah, yeah. So there
Yeah,
is life after pro.
oh,
It doesn't
I
have to stop.
I hope so. I certainly hope so. Over the years, having been in this for so long, and been a pro myself, and but worked with pros or been friends with pros, you see all different paths that people take, and I sometimes you see that the athlete who once they are done racing professionally don't do the thing anymore. And I sometimes just wonder about that. I don't know what the value judgment is there, or where they're coming from with the perspective on that. Maybe they're just not doing it anymore right now, and maybe they will be in 5 years. I certainly went through that for a couple of years where I was very like I did the mountain biking thing. Instead of triathlon, I was still involved in an endurance lifestyle, right? But it's I what I do like to see is the athlete who transitions from being a pro to being an age grouper and just still doing the thing, whatever it is. And because it demonstrates to me, I'm not going to say it. Yeah, it just demonstrates to me like they're doing it because they love it, you know. And it's not a chore. And in a lot of ways, in a lot of ways, racing pro was just a different start time. And if you're in comparing yourself against a different set of people and the results, and once you transition out of that, you start a little bit later, you click on a different drop down menu in terms of the results. And otherwise, who gives a shit? You know, like it's all supposed to be fun.
Yeah. So I think that's a good place to transition and talk about coaching pros, because you've coached a lot of pros over the years. Yeah. And
Yeah.
so well, all right. You just said it's just a different drop down menu, you're racing different people, but coaching a pro has to be different than coaching age grouper. I mean, right? I mean, more time, more recovery, more like just, or I mean, how is it
More
different?
pressure. More
More
pressure.
pressure. Yeah.
Um, it's more pressure on the athlete. I'm like physiologically, they're just a human, right? And they tend to be more talented. But with that, I think often comes a lot of expectation, both in themselves and in how they perceive others expecting things of them. And so I think it can be oftentimes be a lot. It can be. It can be. I've seen it be. I feel like I was lucky in that respect when I was racing. I didn't feel the things that I see a lot of pro athletes feel in terms of um, some level of validation coming from performance, um, and 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 you have some pros who go all in on things, and that can create a lot of pressure, a lot of financial pressure. The athlete who chooses not to work in a full time position in order to just go all in on training and racing, and you see they they you can see them put a lot of expectation and pressure on their training in very granular things in their training. If say tempo intervals on the bike were 3 watts lower than they would have wanted, like it's the end of the world kind of thing, and it's just not that big a deal, right? And I don't see that with age groupers often. I won't say that I won't say that I never see that with age groupers, right? But I think there's a lot to be said when you go all in on something. You put a lot of weight on all of the pieces that are affected by that thing that you've gone all in on. Um, I don't envy that. So I guess what's the difference, right? The difference is less about the training or the physiology. It's really about like the helping an athlete to manage the expectations around their training and performances, and not to be so self-critical,
Mhm.
like really self-critical on things that don't really matter, you know. And you know, if they become habitual, like if every week for 8 weeks your zone 2 wattage is 3 to 4 watts lower than you want, all right, well maybe there's something there. But like if it's just every now and again, that's just a performance, you know. And a lot of pressure on the idea of perfection in their training, absolute perfection. When and one thing I really try to um, espouse, and probably don't do a great job of, is like the spirit of a workout.
Mhm.
What was the intent of the workout, and did you come close to achieving that intent? Because if you take that, if you keep checking off the box in terms of maintaining the spirit of a workout over the course of time, the cumulative effect of that will be huge, right? Um, Whereas if you're going to expect a workout to be perfect, um, Like you're setting yourself up to be disappointed all the time.
Sure.
It's failure after failure. I can't walk to the refrigerator without imperfection, right? And like it just, you can't expect that of yourself. I think that's one area, and it is a weakness in at least my coaching approaches. Like the Training Peaks structured workouts. I mean, it's wonderfully convenient. It's great. It's a great guide, but it creates this expectation. And if your workout file doesn't look exactly like the blue boxes on the screen, well, what the hell were you doing, right? And that shouldn't be reality. But it's certainly something that I do because it's convenient, and it does help with a certain communication of what we're after. But I don't think that it does a very good job, nor do I do a good job of bridging the gap to communicate. Like, yeah, like it should like smell like this. It doesn't have to be like this, right? Um, so, but
So
that's the difference.
I just want to explore something here because triathlon and professional triathletes, for most, like all the people who I've interviewed so far, have really said that they've gotten into the world of become professional triathletes because they want to see how good they can be. They're not going into it because of the financial benefits to it. And most people are still right. Well, but I just want to talk about this a little and why if this is part of what the issue is, right? Because you come in and there's no salary, right? I mean, you don't get paid. There's no minimum amount you get paid. Yeah, okay, you get a race pass and you can do as many Ironmans as you want. That's awesome. I mean, because triathlon is an expensive sport, and you may get some gear and you may get a travel expense kicked in, but you're not like, there's no like salary that comes out of it. So how much of the pressure is because people are, I mean, do you think that some of that pressure, I guess, could be released if there was actually money in the sport? Because you're saying, like, I mean, one of the people I interviewed who took a long time to decide whether she wanted to go pro or not, there was a lot about all the things that as a family that they would need to sacrifice because now they couldn't work as much. And so they were making less money. And so therefore the performance became important, like to justify why they were giving up and making that sacrifice, right? So if you were in a place where you're like, okay, well, all pros get paid at least, I don't know, $75,000. Do you think it would change that pressure at all? Or is it just part of the people who go pro are so self-critical that it wouldn't make a difference?
I think it would make a difference. It would certainly make a difference. I'm not going to say that it would. I I 100% think it would make a difference. I don't know what the difference would be. In some respects, it would definitely alleviate a lot of financial pressure on people, for sure. Um, Now I don't know if, and there's some people who when that pressure was taken off of them would be relieved that pressure would be taken off of them. There are other people who would say, oh, now there's room to apply more pressure somewhere else, right? There would be certainly some people who would say, I don't have an excuse, right? Um, so, and I don't think that that's a pro thing. I think that, I mean, it might be a certain set of people who tend towards, I mean, I mean, we're talking about a subset of humans, of triathletes, and then a subset within that, right? But the larger subset of triathletes are extremely driven people, extremely driven, and and then when you have the athletes who are racing pro, you have people who are very driven and have a certain physical talent that go, or people who um, are uber driven with less of a talent, say, but they can make up the difference because they are so driven. Um, and but all of that is a stew for expectation, right? These are people who take on challenges by nature, right? They are going to be self-critical, and I don't think there's anything wrong with being self-critical, right? You just have to manage it, right? It can't derail why you're doing what you're doing. You don't like there's all kinds of currencies in the world, right? And so somebody who goes all in on triathlon is probably they're not doing it for money, right? So they're looking for a different currency, right? And that currency may be lifestyle, it may be challenge, and whatever it may be. They're looking to maximize that thing, right? And I have to believe most of the time people do it because it's fun and it makes them feel better about themselves.
Mhm.
And so if it becomes something that's not fun and is making you feel shitty about yourself, then not only are you making no money doing it, but the currency that you're trying to collect in terms of making up for that, not making any money, you're going bankrupt there too, right? So it's kind of lose lose in that respect, and that's when you see a lot of pressure um, come from athletes, and a lot of pressure be placed onto performance. Is they say I'm giving up so much, I have to get something out of this, right? Um, and if it's and sometimes that pressure can just like derail the fun factor, which then if you're not having fun and you're not getting the results that you want and you're not making any money, well, I mean, there's all kinds of things you can do that.
Yeah, I mean, and that's where I look at it because it says, okay, well, what is it to say for when someone dedicates to being a pro? It's a lot of time. I mean, it's 30 hours a week of training. And I mean, then there's the rest and the recovery and the resting. I mean, everything that you need to do with it. And you're working, you're still trying to work a job because you have to make money and you've got your family. And so, like, if you could give up that job because, hey, you're a pro, you should be being paid for this. But I guess that's a discussion for, something else. But it just feels like something that's,
I think, like I said, and I think that's where you see like a lot of like that's where the PTO is that they're doing a little bit of that. I mean they're not it's not dead on, but it's you're seeing an environment, and who knows how long it will last, right? But I think it's good. Um, but you're seeing an environment where, say, a woman could get pregnant and not necessarily have a lost year in terms of financial income, right? Um, I can't speak to what the alleviation of that particular pressure might be, but I imagine it's pretty significant, right? Because I mean, how many women were either driven out of the sport because they got pregnant, and so they lost a year, and they said, I can't get back. Like I have to go do something else, right? Like or how many women put off starting a family because they couldn't like take the break, right? Um, that's I don't think that's something we can know,
Mhm.
right? Um, but I'm sure it's in there.
Yeah. So, all right. So with all of that, before we started recording today, you told me that you're talking to a potential athlete earlier who was
Oh
thinking
yeah.
about going pro. So if you came like now and someone said to you, Tim, thinking about going pro, what advice do you give them? What things do you tell them that they should, consider in making that decision?
So yeah, so it was fun to talk to this young girl. I think she's in her like mid-20s, and she is on the local scene. She she is very fast, and she's getting bored, and so she's thinking about going pro. Um, and I just thought it was I loved the reasoning behind it. Like she wanted to go and put herself in an environment where she might lose, where she will lose, right? In order to get better, because she's like, I'm just stagnating. Her training has been literally, she recited it to me, literally the same for 5 years. She does the same exact thing every week for 5 years. And she has come to the realization that it's mostly because she doesn't have to not. It results in wins,
Yeah.
right? And so we would kind of, and I said, you have all kinds of choices, right? And I, as a coach, I always say, I don't, and I told her, I said, person, I don't give a damn what you race. Like, if you want to go pro, I got your back. If you want to race age group, I got your back. If you want to train for the local neighborhood 5K, cool. If you just want to do workouts, fine. Whatever you do, you got to have fun doing it. Because if you're not having fun, you ain't going to do it for long, right? And so it doesn't really matter to me what you do. But that said, and to probably answer the question, if you're going to go pro, you do have to think about some things. And one of those things is, like, when you have been a big fish in a small pond, there's a certain psychology that goes with that. And particularly when you make the switch to become, because you are going to become a small fish in a big pond, right? That's going to happen. Are you going to be able to handle that? And if you think you can, go for it, right? But if it's going to kill the fun, then don't. Just don't. Don't do that. That's the biggest consideration that I kind of try. Are you? I don't mean to bring a negative light to it, because I'm not trying to do that, right? But it is an important consideration. Are you prepared and willing to go get your ass kicked for a little bit while you kind of find your way through, up the results? Because you're going to have to go through the grind. And she was the kind of girl I was talking. I said, I enjoy this conversation because I said, I feel like I just got the sense of objectivity from her that if she went pro, she would be, and who knows what the reality will be, right? But if she went pro and she went to the results page after the race and she saw her name down here where it used to be here, but she saw that her time or whatever, her performance was 5% faster, right? She would see the 5% faster, and that would be like, okay, I'm doing things right, not this delta, right? And like the difference is in the difference, right? But which difference are you looking at? Are you looking at your improvement time, or are you looking at this kind of change, right? And just her, it seemed like, again, the reality could be different, but it seemed like her natural disposition was such that she was, without being conscious about it at all. And I think this is an important thing for somebody considering going pro as well, is subconsciously she's able to classify or categorize things as goals, targets, and outcomes, and where they are on the importance scale. And just the fact that she goes and wins every local race that she does, right? That's an outcome. But she recognizes that she's not challenging herself. She's bored. So that's not valuable enough to her anymore. So she wants to change, she wants to shake things up to create a difference there, right? To me, that was doing it for the right reasons. It was doing it for a challenge. Is your reasoning going to be challenge related, or is it going to be ego related? If it's challenge related, go. If it's ego related, think twice.
Yeah, I guess most people don't go into their first pro race and win it. So you gotta be, I'm sure someone has
most
over
people aren't
time,
Chrissy
but
Wellington. Most people are not Chrissy Wellington. And
yeah.
and it's, it, I think things happen a little more quickly now, in terms of, like, it took me like those 7 years to start getting results. Now, I did a lot of screwing up, right? Like I was really ignorant and blind to a lot of things that I could have been doing. Like I said, my learning curve was like this steep, right? Um, and I think things happen. There's just more information that are ready all the time. Um, but you got to be willing to go on that journey of starting down here and kind of
Sure.
working your way up somewhere. Um, so I don't know. Did that answer the question of how I would advise a younger person thinking about going pro?
Yeah, I think you did. I mean, it's just
There's what you
explain
yeah, I'm
me.
sorry. There's what you can do and there's what you should do, right? Like like I said earlier, the reason I went pro was because I could, right? It wasn't because I should. It was because I could. I had the qualification standards, and I could do it, so therefore I did do it. And there's going to be a lot of athletes out there who meet the qualification standards, right? That those are coulds. That doesn't mean that they are going to be in a good place mentally or emotionally to do it, um, and maybe just not ready yet, right? Like it's, and that's okay. Yet the word is yet, right? Like they may get there, um, and when they're there, then when they get there, then that can start to turn into a should, right? I should go, and I guess that's what I was hearing from that conversation that I had today was somebody who was kind of feeling like I think I should do this, not because I can, but because I need that extra juice in my triathloning in order to like she was telling me about a race that she did recently where she was winning the race, but she ended up coming in second because she let a young 14-year-old athlete who was racing against her like catch up and finish ahead. And she's like, "Oh, go, you take it," right? And it's just kind of like she's like, "Yeah, that's kind of where I am right now." Um, which is I think it's probably amazing for that young 14-year-old
Yeah,
girl, right?
yeah,
But this girl needs a challenge, right? She's competitive by nature.
yeah. All right. Well, I think we'll wrap it up here, Tim. Thanks for taking the time going down memory lane a little bit and giving
Been a
some good
while.
advice out there. Well, it's a long career, and that's
Yeah.
I was telling I mean, I never raced as a pro for triathlon. I did for a few years on the as a cyclist, but I've been racing for over, God, triathlon. I mean, more than, 25 years. It's a long
Yeah.
time. A lot of stories out there, and I'm
So many that you forget. Like
yeah, so many that you forget. And then, I mean, my son asks me all the time about races, and then they come back to me, or like, and the memories can be so vivid sometimes. So
yeah.
it's a long journey, and it's,
It's fun. I'll say it's fun to it's I don't think I did things right correctly, but I don't think I would have done them differently either. They set on the path. You kind of I've seen the sport from so many different angles now. Both as an age group athlete, a pro athlete, uh, the significant other of pro athletes, as a coach of age group, as a coach of pros, running a triathlon business. It's like you've seen this entire encompassing, from so many different, and it's just been it's it's been it's been a lot of fun. I would not have imagined that this is where it would go, 26 years ago. But I'm certainly glad it did. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks, Tim, for taking the time. And it's a lot of interesting stories. Thank you.
Thank you.